My son looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Mom, this place is best for you now." Then he drove away, leaving me alone in an old house deep in the woods. He thought no one would ever find me. What he didn't know was that I had already decided to disappear long before he left. If you've ever wondered how far betrayal can go inside a family, stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about abandonment. It's about the day my son lost something money could never buy. My name is Evelyn Brooks, and I'm 71 years old. For most of my life, I believed that love could survive anything. I was wrong. After my husband James passed away, my world became very quiet. The house felt empty. The evenings felt longer. Still, I never complained. I kept busy tending my small garden, baking pies for neighbors, and waiting for my son Michael to visit. He always said he was busy. Busy with work, busy with meetings, busy with life. At first I believed him. Then the visits became phone calls. The phone calls became text messages. Eventually, even those stopped. Months would pass before I heard his voice. Every time we spoke, the conversation somehow turned toward my house. "Mom, living alone isn't safe. You should think about moving." "What would you even do with a house this big?" I always smiled. "This house isn't just walls, Michael. It's where your father built our family." He'd sigh. "You're too sentimental." Maybe I was, but memories aren't something you pack into moving boxes. One Friday afternoon, Michael suddenly showed up at my door. He hugged me tighter than usual. For a moment, I thought he had missed me. Instead, he smiled. "I found the perfect place for you." "What place?" "A peaceful cabin. You'll love it. It's quiet, no noisy neighbors, fresh air." He made it sound like paradise. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. The drive took nearly 3 hours. The farther we drove, the fewer houses I saw. Eventually, even the paved road disappeared. Trees surrounded us from every direction. No stores, no people, no phone signal. Finally, we stopped in front of an old wooden house. The paint was peeling. Several windows were cracked. The porch leaned to one side. It looked forgotten. Michael forced a smile. "It only needs a little work." I looked at him. "You expect me to live here?" "Just for a little while. Until we figure things out." Something inside me whispered, this wasn't temporary. As we carried my suitcase inside, dust floated through the sunlight. The furniture was old. The fireplace hadn't been used in years. There wasn't even a television. I turned toward my son. "When are you coming back?" He avoided my eyes. "Soon." "How soon?" "In a few days." I walked closer. "Michael, tell me the truth for the first time." He looked annoyed. "Mom, I can't keep putting my life on hold. I have responsibilities. I have a family." I felt my heart sink. "So I'm a responsibility now?" He didn't answer. Instead, he placed a small grocery bag on the kitchen counter. "There should be enough food for a few days." Then he picked up his car keys. I followed him outside. "Michael." He stopped but never turned around. "I'll call you." The engine started. Gravel scattered beneath the tires. Within seconds, his car disappeared behind the trees. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd ever heard. No traffic, no voices, no birds. Just the wind moving through the forest. I stood there for several minutes, not crying, not shouting, simply accepting something I had refused to believe for months. My son hadn't brought me here to rest. He had brought me here to be forgotten. I slowly walked back inside, sat in the old rocking chair near the dusty window. Then I smiled. Because Michael believed he had made the final decision. He had no idea that my own plan had already begun. The next morning, instead of waiting for my son to return, I packed my bag, locked the cabin door behind me, and quietly disappeared into the forest. The forest was quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet enough to make you realize how completely alone you were. I adjusted the small backpack on my shoulder and started walking down the narrow dirt road. I had no map, no phone signal, only one destination in mind: freedom. Michael believed he had abandoned me. What he never understood was that I'd spent months preparing for this day. After James passed away, I had quietly started saving money in a separate account, just a little at a time. I wasn't planning to run away. I simply wanted something every person deserves: a choice. And now that choice was mine. For nearly 2 hours, I followed the old logging road until I finally reached a small gas station beside the highway. The young cashier looked surprised when I walked in. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I smiled. "I am now." He kindly offered me a bottle of water while I called a local taxi service. An hour later, I arrived in the nearest town. It wasn't fancy, just one main street, a diner, a grocery store, and a small motel. To me, it looked like a brand new beginning. The motel owner, an elderly woman named Grace, greeted me with a warm smile. "Traveling alone?" I nodded. For the first time in a long time, she handed me a room key. "Then welcome." Those simple words meant more than she could ever imagine. The following morning, I visited a nearby community center. A volunteer named Sarah noticed me sitting alone with a cup of coffee. "First time here?" "Yes." She sat beside me. "We have book clubs, gardening classes, walking groups, even volunteer programs." I couldn't remember the last time someone had invited me to be part of something. Within a week, I knew nearly everyone in town. I helped organize the community garden, read stories to children at the public library every Thursday, baked pies for weekend charity events. For the first time since James passed away, people weren't treating me like someone waiting for life to end. They treated me like someone still living it. Meanwhile, Michael drove back to the cabin exactly 4 days later. He expected to find me sitting in the rocking chair waiting. Instead, the house was empty, my suitcase was gone, the kitchen was clean, the bed was neatly made. Only one thing remained, a handwritten note on the table. It simply read, "Don't look for someone you chose to leave behind." Michael stared at those words for several minutes. Then he pulled out his phone. No signal. He drove 20 minutes back toward the highway before finally making the first call. No answer. He called again and again. By sunset, he had called 12 times. The next morning, 23. By the end of the third day, 49 missed calls, 49 voicemails, 49 chances to say the words he should have spoken before driving away. Grace walked into the motel lobby holding my phone. "Evelyn, I think someone is trying very hard to reach you." I looked at the screen. 49 missed calls, every single one, from Michael. She looked concerned. "Aren't you going to answer?" I gently locked the phone and placed it back in my purse. "Not today," she hesitated. "Family," I nodded. "My son," she smiled kindly. "He must be worried." I looked out the window for a long moment. Maybe, but sometimes people confuse guilt with concern. Grace didn't ask another question. She simply poured me another cup of coffee. That evening I rented a small lakeside cottage on the edge of town. It wasn't expensive, it wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. The porch overlooked the water. Wildflowers surrounded the fence. For the first time in years, I slept without feeling unwanted. On the 7th day, there was another voicemail. This time, Michael wasn't angry. He wasn't making excuses. His voice was shaking. "Mom, please, if you hear this, just tell me you're alive. I've searched everywhere. I was wrong. Please, come home." I listened quietly. Then I deleted the message. Not because I hated him, because I needed him to understand something. Home was never the place he left me. Home was the place where I was respected, and I had finally found it. The next morning, as I watered flowers on my porch, a black SUV slowly pulled into the driveway. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He looked around before asking politely, "Mrs. Evelyn Brooks, yes? My name is David Collins. I'm your late husband's attorney." I frowned. "My husband's attorney?" He nodded. "I've been trying to locate you for nearly a week." He held up a sealed envelope. "It concerns something your husband wanted you to receive. Only if the day ever came when you had no one left to depend on." I stared at the envelope, my hands trembling, because I suddenly realized James had seen this day coming long before I ever did. David Collins waited patiently while I held the envelope in my hands. For a moment, I couldn't bring myself to open it. James had been gone for almost 6 years, yet somehow it felt like he was standing beside me again. I slowly broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line immediately filled my eyes with tears. "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means one thing. Someone has made you feel like you no longer belong. I prayed that day would never come. But if it does, promise me one thing. Never let anyone decide your worth." I smiled through my tears. That sounded exactly like James. David quietly waited until I finished reading. Then he placed another folder on the table. "There's something else." I looked up. "What is it?" "Your husband created a family trust shortly before he passed away." I frowned. "A trust?" He nodded. "He instructed us not to release it unless you personally appeared at our office, or if we learned you had been abandoned or forced from your home." I stared at him in disbelief. "He expected this," David sighed. He told me something I'll never forget. People don't always change after money appears. Sometimes money simply reveals who they already are. I lowered my eyes. James had known our son better than I had. David opened the folder. Mrs. Brooks. The trust includes investment accounts, farmland your husband never sold, and several commercial properties. I blinked. I didn't know we still owned any of those. He kept them separate. He wanted them protected. I looked at the final page. The estimated value. Just over $9.8 million. I closed the folder without another word. The money wasn't what shocked me. It was realizing that James had spent his final years protecting me, even after he was gone. David spoke again. There's one condition. I looked up. What condition? The assets belong entirely to you. No one else can access them. Not your children, not future heirs. Only you decide what happens next. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely safe. Not because I had money, because I finally had control over my own life. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Michael, call number 50. This time, I answered. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, Mom? I calmly replied, I'm here. In his voice was immediate. Oh, thank God. I thought something terrible had happened. It did. Silence. Then he quietly asked, Can I see you? I looked out across the lake. You can, but you're coming to my home. Not yours. Mine. The next day, Michael arrived alone. He looked completely different. No expensive suit, no confident smile, just a tired man carrying the weight of his own choices. When he stepped onto the porch, he stopped. I've never seen you look this happy. I smiled. Because you never saw me after Dad died. He lowered his head. You're right. We sat on the porch facing the lake. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Michael finally broke the silence. I've replayed that day 1,000 times. I kept telling myself I was helping you. But the truth is, I was helping myself. I nodded. That's the first honest thing you've said. Tears filled his eyes. I was overwhelmed. The bills, the kids, my job. I convinced myself that if you were out there, my life would become easier. I looked directly at him. Did it? He slowly shook his head. No. I lost sleep. I couldn't eat. I searched every road. I called you 49 times. I realized too late. I wasn't afraid of losing the house. I was afraid of losing my mother. I reached into the small box beside my chair and handed him James's letter. Read the last paragraph. Michael read silently. Then his shoulders began to shake. The final words were simple. Take care of your mother, the way she spent her life taking care of you. If you ever forget that, wealth will never make you rich. Michael covered his face. Dad knew. Yes, he always did. A few minutes later, David stepped outside with the trust documents. Michael looked at the folder. I don't want to know what's in it. I smiled. I'm glad. Because this isn't about money, he nodded. I don't deserve anything. I placed my hand gently over his. No, but you deserve the chance to become a better man. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about the cabin, the empty road, the silence, the 49 missed calls. Then I answered honestly. I can forgive you, but trust has to be rebuilt, one choice at a time. He nodded. I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. Over the following months, Michael visited every weekend. Not because he expected anything, because he wanted to be there. Sometimes we planted flowers together, sometimes we fished on the lake, sometimes we simply sat on the porch without saying a word. Slowly, the relationship we had lost began to grow again. Not perfectly, but honestly. 1 year later, I donated part of James's trust to build a community center for seniors who had been abandoned or left alone. Above the entrance hung a small wooden sign. It read, No one is forgotten here. The day it opened, Michael stood beside me. He quietly squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Mom. I smiled. Your father would be proud of you, too. He looked surprised. Really? I nodded. Because you finally learned that love isn't measured by what you inherit. It's measured by how you treat the people who loved you first. As the sun set over the lake, I realized something I wished every family understood. A parent doesn't fear growing old. They fear becoming invisible to the people they gave everything for. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's finding peace without them. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional family stories of betrayal, justice, forgiveness, and hope. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. The end.